The envelope had been sitting in Owen Callahan's truck for 3 weeks. Every morning, he glanced at it before turning the ignition. Every evening, he told himself tomorrow would be the day he finally opened it. Instead, he reached for his toolbox. "Lily," he called as his 9-year-old daughter climbed into the passenger seat after school. "Mrs. Brooks probably forgot to switch off her porch light again." Lily smiled, already knowing their routine. "Or she'll pretend she forgot because she likes seeing you fix things." Owen chuckled but didn't answer. She wasn't entirely wrong. The quiet neighborhood in Cedar Ridge had become familiar after he moved there 18 months earlier. He knew which fences leaned after every storm, which maple tree dropped leaves too early, and which elderly neighbors refused to ask for help even when they clearly needed it. Evelyn Brooks topped that list. She insisted she was perfectly capable of living alone in the old white house at the end of Willow Lane, despite arthritis that made opening jars a challenge and stairs that groaned louder each season. Owen had stopped arguing months ago. Instead, he simply showed up. Sometimes he replaced a faulty outlet. Sometimes he carried groceries inside. Sometimes he only sat on the porch while Evelyn told Lily stories about growing up before highways cut through the county. He never accepted $1. Not because he was wealthy. Quite the opposite. His electrical contracting jobs barely covered rent, gas, and Lily's growing list of school expenses. Every invoice mattered. Every cancelled appointment meant another difficult calculation at the kitchen table after Lily went to bed. Still, there were lines Owen refused to cross. He had promised himself the day he lost his previous career that no one, not another company, not another executive, not another stranger with power, would decide what kind of man he became. Helping Evelyn wasn't charity. It was a choice only he could make. As they turned onto Willow Lane, Lily looked out the window. "Dad? If Mrs. Brooks ever has to leave her house." He glanced at her. "Would she be sad?" He slowed at the stop sign before answering. "I think losing the right to choose hurts people more than moving ever does." Lily quietly nodded, as though she understood more than a child should. "Before we go any further, I'd love to know something about you. How old are you, where are you watching from, and have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone else decided what was best for you without asking?" When they pulled into Evelyn's driveway, Owen noticed something unusual. A sleek black luxury SUV sat where the cracked concrete was usually empty. Its engine had only recently been switched off. Someone had arrived before them. Owen frowned. "Family?" Lily guessed. Mrs. Brooks said she didn't have anyone nearby. He picked up the container of homemade chicken soup Lily had insisted they bring, tucked the unopened envelope deeper beneath the truck's center console, and walked toward the front porch. The afternoon breeze carried the scent of early autumn leaves as he knocked gently on the faded blue door. Footsteps approached from inside. Not Evelyn's slow, careful steps. These were confident. Measured. Someone younger. The doorknob turned. The woman who opened the door looked nothing like the person Owen remembered from the conference room 2 years earlier. Back then, Claire Ashford had worn a sharp navy suit, her expression unreadable as she listened to reports that ultimately ended with his position being eliminated. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't insulted him. She had simply accepted the recommendation placed in front of her, thanked him for his years of service, and walked out before he could ask the questions that had haunted him ever since. Now she stood in jeans, a cream-colored sweater beneath a lightweight olive jacket, her chestnut hair loosely tied back. She looked tired in a way expensive clothes could never hide. Either of them spoke. Lily broke the silence first. "Hi, is Mrs. Brooks home?" Claire's eyes dropped to the little girl, then to the container of soup in Owen's hands. "She is," Claire answered softly. "She's resting in the living room." Only then did she look directly at Owen. "I didn't know." Her sentence faded before it reached an ending. "I didn't either," Owen replied. His voice remained calm, but every muscle in his shoulders tightened. From inside the house came Evelyn's cheerful voice. "Owen? Lily? Is that you?" Lily hurried past the awkward silence and stepped inside. We brought soup. Evelyn smiled from her favorite armchair beside the window. They are my favorite visitors. She noticed Claire still standing by the doorway. Oh, good. Now everyone can finally meet. Owen carefully placed the soup on the kitchen counter. We've already met. Evelyn looked from one face to the other. You have? Claire answered before Owen could. We used to work together. It wasn't exactly a lie. It simply wasn't the whole truth. Evelyn seemed satisfied and launched into a story about the neighborhood while Lily unpacked crackers and fruit from a grocery bag. For several minutes, Owen focused entirely on replacing a flickering dining room light fixture. It gave his hands something useful to do. Across the room, Claire quietly watched him balance on the small ladder. You still carry the same voltage tester, she said almost absent-mindedly. Owen glanced down. I replace tools that stop working. Nothing more. Nothing less. The sentence landed with more weight than either of them expected. Claire looked away. After the repair was finished, Evelyn insisted everyone stay for tea. Owen almost declined. Then he noticed a slight tremor in Evelyn's hands as she tried lifting the kettle. Without saying anything, he stepped forward and poured each cup himself. Claire reached for the tray at the same time. Their hands brushed briefly before both immediately pulled back. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Evelyn, completely unaware of the history between them, smiled warmly. I keep telling Claire that people around here take care of each other. Claire forced a small smile. I can see that. You should have met Owen when my porch railing collapsed. Evelyn laughed. He showed up before the insurance company even returned my phone call. Lily grinned proudly. Dad says if something can be fixed today, you shouldn't make people wait until tomorrow. Claire looked toward Owen again. You've been helping her that often? She never asked. Then why? Owen took a slow sip of tea before answering. Because needing help shouldn't require someone to beg. Claire lowered her eyes. There was no accusation in his voice. That somehow made it worse. A few moments later, Owen carried the empty soup container to the kitchen. Claire quietly followed. I'm not here because of work, she said. I figured. My aunt has been hiding how much she's been struggling. I'm aware. Claire hesitated. I know you probably think, I don't think anything anymore. He turned to face her. I stopped trying to guess people's reasons a long time ago. The words weren't angry. They were tired. Before Claire could respond, Evelyn called from the living room. Claire, sweetheart? Could you bring me my photo album? Claire excused herself immediately. Owen looked around the familiar kitchen. Something had changed. Medication bottles lined the counter. A walker stood folded beside the pantry door. A stack of unopened medical forms rested near the refrigerator. For the first time, he realized Evelyn hadn't simply grown older. She had quietly crossed into a stage of life where kindness alone might no longer be enough. Outside, through the kitchen window, Owen noticed Claire standing on the back porch alone for a brief moment, staring across the yard with the same uncertain expression he'd seen reflected in his own bathroom mirror after losing everything 2 years earlier. Neither of them knew it yet. But they were about to discover that helping someone wasn't nearly as difficult as agreeing on what help actually meant. The next Saturday began the way most of Owen Callahan's weekends did, with a list. A sheet of notebook paper lay on his kitchen counter beside a half-empty mug of coffee. Replace Mrs. Brooks's loose handrail. Seal the draft around her back window. Pick up Lily's science project supplies. Finish the Johnson rewiring job before Monday. There wasn't room on the page for unexpected problems. Life rarely cared. As Owen loaded lumber into the back of his truck, Lily emerged carrying a small paper bag. I baked oatmeal cookies, she announced proudly. You baked? I supervised the oven. Mrs. Hernandez did. The dangerous part. Owen laughed. Fair enough. When they reached Evelyn's house, they found her sitting on the porch instead of inside. A light blanket rested across her knees despite the mild autumn afternoon. Good timing, Evelyn called. I've been waiting for my construction crew. Owen smiled as he unloaded his tools. The crew works for cookies now. Lily handed Evelyn the paper bag. Those are your wages. Evelyn accepted them with exaggerated seriousness. I'll try not to spend them all at once. The laughter faded as another vehicle turned slowly into the driveway. Claire's SUV. She stepped out carrying several folders and a reusable shopping bag. Morning, she said. Owen nodded politely. So, Evelyn said, looking much too pleased with herself, both of my stubborn helpers are here. Neither answered. Claire approached the porch. I stopped by the pharmacy and picked up your prescriptions. And I brought the railing materials. Owen added. Evelyn sighed dramatically. I suppose being cared for isn't the worst problem to have. While Owen measured the damaged porch rail, Claire unpacked groceries inside. For nearly an hour they worked separately without speaking. Then Owen noticed fresh stickers on several kitchen cabinets. Bright yellow labels. Medication schedule. Emergency contacts. Kitchen safety. He frowned. Did you put these up? Claire looked over from the dining table. I did. Evelyn asked for them? I thought they'd make things easier. Owen carefully removed his work gloves. They might. Claire folded another document. Is there a problem? Not if she wanted them. Claire's expression tightened. She's 81 years old. And? She's beginning to forget things. So we ask what helps. I don't have the luxury of waiting until every decision becomes urgent. Neither voice rose. Yet the room somehow felt smaller. Before either could continue, Evelyn entered carrying 3 glasses of lemonade. What are you two whispering about? Nothing, they answered together. That finally made Evelyn laugh. You sound exactly alike. Both immediately denied it. The laughter lingered long after Evelyn returned outside. Later that afternoon, Owen climbed into the attic to reinforce a loose support beam above the hallway. From there he overheard voices drifting upward through the ceiling vents. Claire wasn't arguing. She was speaking quietly on the phone. No. A pause. I don't want full-time residential care yet. Another pause. Because she hasn't decided that. Silence. I'm aware of the liability. Another long silence followed. Then Claire spoke more softly than before. I know what the recommendations are. I'm asking whether anyone has asked what Evelyn actually wants. Owen stopped tightening the bolt in his hands. That wasn't the conversation he expected to overhear. When he climbed back down an hour later, Claire was sitting alone on the back steps reviewing a thick binder of medical information. Dark circles framed her eyes. She looked less like a powerful executive than a niece trying desperately to understand instructions written in a language she had never learned. Without looking up, she asked, Do you really think she can stay here safely much longer? Owen leaned against the porch railing he had just repaired. I think safety matters. Claire waited. So does dignity. She closed the binder. What if those two things stop agreeing? For the first time since opening the front door a week earlier, either of them had an answer. Inside the house, Lily and Evelyn were assembling a bird feeder at the kitchen table, laughing over crooked instructions and missing screws. Owen watched them through the window. Claire did the same. They saw the same scene. They simply feared losing it for completely different reasons. Monday afternoon brought steady rain, the kind that turned fallen leaves into copper-colored ribbons across the sidewalks. Owen finished replacing an electrical panel on the opposite side of town and checked the time before climbing into his truck. He still had 1 hour before picking Lily up from her after-school art club, just enough time to stop by Evelyn's house and replace the weather stripping around her back door. He wasn't expecting perfection. He was expecting progress. Instead, he found 3 contractor vans parked along the curb. Workers in matching uniforms carried boxed equipment through Evelyn's front door while another crew measured windows with laser tools. Cardboard cartons labeled Smart Home Safety System were stacked beneath the porch roof, still wrapped in plastic. Owen stood motionless for several seconds. One of the workers smiled politely. You family? No. You'll have to excuse the mess. Full accessibility upgrade. Owen slowly climbed the porch steps. Inside, the familiar warmth of Evelyn's home had been replaced by the noise of drills, footsteps, and overlapping conversations. Rugs had been rolled away. Chairs were pushed against the walls. Blueprints covered the dining table. Claire emerged from the hallway carrying a clipboard. She looked surprised to see him. I was going to call. When? She hesitated. After everything was scheduled. Owen looked around the room. The scheduling seems finished. Claire took a slow breath. The occupational therapist completed a new assessment. There were more risks than anyone realized. So you decided? I made arrangements. For who? For Evelyn. Before Claire could continue, Evelyn appeared from the kitchen. She forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. They're all very nice. Owen recognized that tone immediately. It was the voice people used when they didn't want to disappoint someone trying to help them. He walked toward her. Did you ask for all this? Evelyn looked at the workers installing handrails along the hallway. I said the bathroom floor gets slippery. Her answer wasn't really an answer. Claire stepped closer. These changes will reduce the chances of another fall. No one's arguing with safety. Owen replied quietly. I'm asking whether she chose this. The room fell silent for a moment. A contractor cleared his throat and quietly led his crew into another room. Claire lowered the clipboard. I didn't have time to wait. Owen looked directly at her. Sometimes waiting is the only way people know their voice still matters. Evelyn sank slowly into her favorite armchair, now surrounded by unopened boxes and unfamiliar equipment. She rested one hand on the worn wooden armrest, as though reassuring herself it was still there. Outside, rain tapped steadily against the windows. Inside, no one raised their voice. Yet the house felt less like a home than it had only 3 days before. For the first time, Owen realized the greatest danger facing Evelyn might not be age itself. It might be how quickly good intentions could begin replacing her choices, one careful decision at a time. 3 days passed before Owen returned to Evelyn's house. Not because he was angry. Because he needed time to make sure his next decision came from conviction instead of frustration. He parked along the curb just after sunrise. The contractor vans were gone, leaving behind a home that looked almost unchanged from the outside. Only a new metal handrail beside the front steps hinted that something inside had shifted. Lily carried a small basket filled with apples and homemade muffins. I hope Mrs. Brooks likes cinnamon. She always does, Owen replied. When Evelyn opened the door, she smiled warmly, but Owen noticed something different immediately. She stepped aside before inviting them in. A small movement. Almost automatic. As if she no longer felt entirely at ease in her own house. The living room was spotless. Too spotless. The familiar knitted blanket had been folded into a perfect square. The old rocking chair had been moved to make room for a mobility device. Small electronic sensors blinked quietly near the windows. Everything was safer. Nothing felt familiar. Lily ran toward Evelyn and hugged her. We missed you. I missed you too, sweetheart. Her smile returned for a moment. Only for a moment. Owen helped carry groceries into the kitchen while Evelyn prepared tea. She reached automatically for a ceramic mug hanging from the highest cabinet. Then she stopped. A bright label read, Use lower shelf only. She stared at it for several seconds before quietly reaching for a different cup. Owen said nothing. Later, while Lily worked on homework at the dining table, Evelyn stepped onto the back porch with Owen. The autumn air had grown cooler. The maple tree behind the fence had already surrendered half its leaves. I should be grateful, Evelyn said without looking at him. You don't sound grateful. She smiled sadly. Claire loves me. I know. So do you. Owen remained silent. She folded her hands together. Do you know what everyone keeps asking me lately? He shook his head. Are you safe? Another pause. No one asks whether I'm still myself. The words lingered between them long after she finished speaking. Inside the house, Claire arrived carrying another grocery bag. She stopped when she saw Owen through the kitchen window. Neither hurried to greet the other. Instead, she quietly unpacked fresh vegetables into the refrigerator. Lily noticed her first. "Hi, Miss Claire." Claire smiled. "Hi, Lily. Want to see my science project?" "I'd love to." Within minutes, the two were bent over cardboard planets spread across the dining table. Claire listened carefully as Lily explained the solar system with complete confidence. "You know," Claire said, "you're very good at explaining things. My dad says people understand better when you don't make them feel small." Claire glanced toward the back porch. The sentence settled heavily inside her. Outside, Owen and Evelyn continued talking. "I don't blame Claire," Evelyn said softly. "Neither do I. She thinks she's protecting me." "She does." Evelyn watched two sparrows fighting over seeds beneath the bird feeder Lily had helped build. "I spent 43 years teaching 4th grade. Owen smiled. "I can believe that. I taught children how to become adults." She looked toward her front door. "Now everyone speaks to me as though I'm becoming a child." Owen didn't know how to answer. Because she wasn't entirely wrong. A sudden crash interrupted the quiet. Both hurried inside. One of the newly installed motion sensors had startled Evelyn's cat, Oliver, sending him leaping onto a side table. A framed family photograph had fallen to the hardwood floor. The glass had shattered. Claire immediately rushed over. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. I'll clean this. It's only glass." "No, please don't bend down." Before Evelyn could move, Claire had already taken over. She collected the broken frame, retrieved the broom, and guided Evelyn gently toward a chair. It all happened in less than 30 seconds. Fast. Efficient. Automatic. When the floor was clean, Owen noticed Evelyn still watching the empty space where the photograph had been. He picked up the picture itself, thankfully untouched by the broken glass. It showed a much younger Evelyn standing beside her late husband outside the very same house. The porch looked freshly painted. A swing still hung from the old oak tree. She accepted the photograph carefully. "I remember that day." Claire looked at the picture. "We can have the frame replaced." Evelyn nodded politely. But instead of looking at the damaged frame, she quietly whispered something almost too soft to hear. "I wish people would stop replacing everything." The room fell silent. Claire froze. For the first time since taking responsibility for her aunt's care, she saw the house through Evelyn's eyes. Not as a collection of hazards waiting to be eliminated, but as a lifetime of memories slowly being edited without permission. No one argued. No one defended themselves. Yet something essential had shifted. Claire realized that every improvement she had made had answered a question Evelyn had never actually asked. And Owen, standing beside the broken photograph, felt an uncomfortable truth settle into his own heart. How many times had he made choices for Lily simply because he believed he already knew the right answer? The silence that filled the room wasn't caused by broken glass. It was caused by a realization none of them could ignore anymore. Helping someone without first hearing their voice could become another way of taking it away. The following Wednesday, Owen found Lily sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with 2 permission slips spread out in front of her. She looked unusually quiet. "Everything okay?" he asked as he placed his toolbox beside the door. She glanced up. "Our class is going to the Science Museum next month." "That's great. It costs $40. Owen picked up the form and read it carefully. $40 wasn't impossible, but it meant rearranging the week's budget again. "We'll make it work," he said. Lily hesitated. "I already told Mrs. Dawson I couldn't go." His head lifted. "You what?" "I knew money's been tight." "You should have talked to me first." She lowered her eyes. "I thought I was helping." The words stopped him. For a brief moment, he saw Evelyn standing beside her kitchen window. "I wish people would stop replacing everything. Helping someone without first hearing their voice." He slowly sat beside Lily instead of standing over her. What made you think I wanted you to decide that by yourself? I didn't want you to worry. Owen folded the permission slip. I appreciate that. She waited. But you're part of this family. Lily looked confused. So decisions that affect both of us should belong to both of us. She studied his face. Even if I choose something different than you? He smiled faintly. Especially then. It was a sentence he wasn't sure he had ever truly believed until now. The next afternoon, he drove to Evelyn's house carrying a replacement picture frame he had repaired himself using the original wood. When Claire opened the door, she stepped aside before he even asked. Evelyn's in the garden. He nodded. As he walked through the hallway, he noticed several unopened delivery boxes stacked neatly against one wall. Medical supplies. Safety equipment. Still sealed. Claire joined him outside a moment later. Evelyn sat beneath the maple tree, wrapped in a light blanket while trimming herbs from a small planter. She looked more peaceful outdoors than she had inside the house all week. I brought your frame back, Owen said. She accepted it carefully. You kept the scratches. I thought they belonged there. Her fingers traced the worn edges. Thank you. Claire watched quietly. After a long silence, she spoke. I owe both of you an apology. Neither interrupted. I spent my entire career solving problems before they became crises. She looked toward the house. It works in boardrooms. A small smile crossed her face. It doesn't always work in families. Evelyn reached over and gently squeezed her niece's hand. I know why you did it. I never asked what you wanted. No. Claire took a slow breath. I kept hearing doctors, lawyers, consultants, insurance advisors. She laughed softly at herself. I listened to everyone except the person actually living here. Owen leaned against the fence, saying nothing. Claire turned toward him. I also owe you an apology. You don't owe me one. I judged you once using paperwork. He met her eyes. And this time? This time I almost judged my aunt the same way. The honesty surprised them both. Before Owen could answer, Lily came running through the side gate carrying a sketchbook. Mrs. Brooks. I finished the bird feeder drawing. Evelyn smiled. Come show me. Lily opened the sketchbook on the garden table. Instead of one bird feeder, she had drawn 4 people standing around it. 1 little girl. 1 elderly woman. 1 man. 1 woman. Each held a different bag of birdseed. Above them she had written in careful handwriting, Nobody feeds the birds alone. Claire smiled. It's beautiful. Lily tilted her head. I almost drew just Dad. Why didn't you? Because the birds don't care who fills the feeder. She shrugged. They just need everyone to stop scaring them. The adults exchanged quiet glances. Children often reach the truth by taking the shortest path. As the afternoon sun filtered through the thinning maple leaves, no one hurried to solve another problem. For the first time, they simply sat together, allowing the conversation to wander wherever Evelyn wanted it to go. It wasn't a dramatic change. It was something much smaller. And perhaps much harder. They had finally stopped speaking for her long enough to hear her own voice. A week later, the phone rang just after dawn. Owen recognized Claire's number before he answered. She's okay, Claire said immediately, her voice steady but tired. She got dizzy in the garden yesterday. Her doctor wants us to come in this morning for a full evaluation. We'll be there. By the time Owen and Lily arrived at the clinic, Evelyn was already sitting near the examination rooms with a knitted shawl around her shoulders. She looked more annoyed than frightened. I've spent 40 minutes answering questions, she whispered as Owen approached. Apparently, I've reached the age where everyone wants to know whether I remember today's date. Lily grinned. Do you? Evelyn smiled. I remember enough to know hospital coffee still tastes terrible. Even Claire laughed. An hour later, the physician invited them into a consultation room. He spoke calmly, never rushing. Evelyn's heart is stable. Her memory is still strong. But the dizziness concerns me. Living alone is becoming more complicated. He laid 3 options on the table. A full-time assisted living residence, moving into Claire's home, or remaining in her own house with carefully planned support and regular medical supervision. Then he did something none of them expected. He turned toward Evelyn first. What matters most to you? The room became very quiet. Owen looked at Claire. Claire looked back at him. Neither spoke. Neither answered for Evelyn. She folded her hands in her lap and stared through the window for several moments before responding. I've lived in that house for 46 years. The doctor nodded without interrupting. I buried my husband after promising him I'd fill the bird feeder every winter. Her voice remained calm. I planted every tree in that yard. She smiled faintly. And every floorboard knows where my feet belong. No one tried to persuade her otherwise. The doctor simply listened. After discussing the medical risks and practical realities, he closed the folder. You don't have to decide today. I do, Evelyn replied gently. If I wait until everyone else is comfortable, the decision won't really belong to me anymore. Claire lowered her eyes. Only a month earlier, she would have immediately argued for the safest option. Today, she remained silent. Owen felt the same impulse rise inside him. He wanted to tell Evelyn that staying might become dangerous. Instead, he remembered the promise he had unknowingly made to himself the day Lily chose to attend the Science Museum. Love wasn't supposed to replace another person's voice. It was supposed to protect their right to use it. As they left the clinic, autumn sunlight spilled across the parking lot. Lily slipped her small hand into Evelyn's. So, Evelyn smiled. I think I'd like everyone to come to my house tomorrow. What for? Claire asked. So I can tell all of you what I've decided. For the first time, no one tried to guess the answer. Before she had the chance to speak. The next afternoon, the old white house on Willow Lane felt exactly the way Evelyn wanted it to. Quiet. No contractors. No advisors. No strangers carrying clipboards. The windows were open just enough to let the cool autumn breeze drift through the living room, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and fresh coffee. The bird feeder outside the kitchen window swayed gently as 2 cardinals landed beside each other. Evelyn insisted everyone sit at the dining table instead of the living room. I've made enough important decisions in this room to know it deserves another one, she said with a smile. Owen sat beside Lily. Claire chose the opposite side of the table. No one rushed Evelyn. For the first time since Claire had arrived weeks earlier, there was no invisible pressure hanging over the conversation. Evelyn unfolded a single sheet of yellow legal paper covered in neat handwritten notes. I wrote this because all of you deserve clarity. She looked first at Claire. You've spent your entire life solving impossible problems. Claire lowered her eyes. You believed loving me meant protecting me from every risk. It did. I know. Evelyn reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand. But I was never asking for a life without risk. Claire swallowed quietly. I was asking for a life that still felt like mine. The room remained silent. Then Evelyn turned toward Owen. And you've been just as stubborn. Owen looked genuinely surprised. I have. You help before anyone asks. He smiled faintly. I thought that was a compliment. It usually is. She smiled back. But sometimes helping is another way of deciding. He thought about Lily giving up the museum trip without telling him. He thought about every broken shelf, every heavy grocery bag, every choice he had quietly made because it seemed easier than asking. Evelyn had seen through him long before he had seen himself. She finally looked toward Lily. And you've reminded all of us that listening isn't nearly as difficult as adults pretend it is. Lily blushed. I mostly just ask questions. Exactly. Evelyn folded the paper and placed it on the table. So here's my decision. No one interrupted. I am staying in my home. Claire inhaled slowly but said nothing. I also accept that I cannot pretend I'm 40 anymore. A small laugh circled the table. I want help. She paused. But only the help I agree to. She turned the paper around so everyone could see it. Instead of a list of instructions written by doctors or consultants, it contained 3 columns in Evelyn's own handwriting. Things I want help with. Things I will do myself. Things we'll decide together if they change. Owen read quietly. Lawn care. Winter roof inspections. Driving after dark. Medication reminders. The list wasn't built around limitations. It was built around choices. Claire studied the page for several seconds before looking at her aunt. I never thought to make the list yours. I know. I kept trying to build the safest future. And forgot to ask whether it was the future I wanted. Claire nodded slowly. I did. The admission carried no excuses. Only honesty. Owen leaned back in his chair. There are a couple of things I'd like to add. Everyone looked at him. Not to your list. He smiled. To mine. He turned toward Lily. Starting today, whenever a decision affects both of us, we make it together. Lily blinked. Even boring ones? He laughed. Especially boring ones. What about your jobs? We'll talk about them. Our budget? We'll talk about that too. What if we disagree? Owen looked at her for a long moment. Then we'll keep talking until we understand each other. Claire watched the exchange quietly. It sounds simple. It isn't, Owen replied. It's slower. Evelyn smiled. The best conversations usually are. A gentle knock interrupted the moment. Mrs. Hernandez from next door stood on the porch holding a casserole dish. I heard there was a family meeting. There was, Evelyn answered. Did everything get settled? Evelyn looked around the table before answering. No. Everyone looked at her. She smiled warmly. We finally stopped trying to settle each other. Mrs. Hernandez laughed without fully understanding. Well, that's something. After she left, the room grew quiet again. Outside, Lily scattered birdseed beneath the feeder while Oliver the cat stretched lazily across the porch steps. Claire stood beside the kitchen window. I've spent years believing leadership meant having the answers before anyone else. Without turning around, she continued. Maybe leadership starts with asking the first question instead. Owen joined her by the window. Maybe. He looked toward Evelyn, who was teaching Lily how to identify migrating birds from memory. Neither of them needed rescuing. Neither of them needed convincing. They simply needed the space to become who they already were. And in the peaceful silence of that small house, everyone finally understood that love was never measured by how many decisions you could make for another person. It was measured by how willingly you trusted them to make their own. The first frost of the season arrived quietly. A thin layer of silver covered the grass outside Evelyn Brooks's house, disappearing little by little as the morning sun climbed above the maple trees. Owen pulled his truck into the driveway just as Lily pointed excitedly toward the bird feeder. They're back. A pair of cardinals had returned, just as Evelyn had promised they would. Inside the house, the smell of fresh cinnamon bread drifted through the kitchen. Evelyn stood at the counter, carefully measuring coffee into an old glass pot. The lower shelves now held the cups she had chosen to move herself. The safety rail remained by the hallway, but several unnecessary devices had been removed after everyone sat down together and reviewed what truly helped and what simply made the house feel unfamiliar. Nothing had returned to exactly the way it once was. That wasn't the goal. The goal had been to make every change belong to Evelyn instead of happening around her. Claire entered through the back door carrying a paper bag from the neighborhood bakery. I brought the blueberry scones you like. Evelyn smiled. I asked you to. Claire laughed. I know. And that's why they taste better. Everyone smiled at the joke, but Owen understood what she really meant. Being asked had become its own kind of gift. As they gathered around the kitchen table, Lily spread out the permission slip from her science museum trip. I almost forgot. She looked at Owen. I think we have another family decision. He grinned. We do. The gift shop. Claire looked puzzled. The gift shop? Lily nodded seriously. I only have $15. Evelyn folded her hands with exaggerated concern. A financial summit. Exactly. They spent the next several minutes debating whether a space shuttle model was a better purchase than a book about planets. No one dismissed Lily's opinion because she was 9. No one made the decision for her because it seemed faster. When she finally chose the book, she smiled with the quiet confidence of someone who knew her voice had mattered. Claire watched the exchange before turning toward Owen. I've been thinking about something. He waited. The day your position was eliminated. The room grew still. I believed I was making a responsible decision. She did not ask for forgiveness. She did not defend herself. I approved reports without ever sitting across the table long enough to know the person whose life they described. Owen looked down at his coffee for a moment. I carried that day with me for a long time. I know. I told myself people with authority stop seeing individuals. Claire nodded slowly. Sometimes they do. A long silence followed. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. Finally Owen looked back up. I can't change what happened. Neither can I. He gave a small, thoughtful smile. But I can decide not to let that day choose the man I become. Claire returned the smile. And I can decide never to mistake information for understanding again. There was nothing more either of them needed to say. No dramatic reconciliation. No grand gesture. No promises about the future. Outside, Lily helped Evelyn scatter birdseed beneath the feeder while Oliver circled their feet, hoping someone might accidentally drop a crumb of bread. The cardinals landed almost immediately. They trust us now, Lily whispered. Evelyn gently shook her head. No. Lily looked up. They're simply free to leave whenever they want. The little girl watched the birds for a moment before smiling. I guess that's why they keep coming back. Owen stood on the porch beside Claire, watching the quiet scene unfold beneath the fading gold leaves of autumn. He finally understood that strength had never meant carrying every burden alone. Claire understood that leadership was never about making the most decisions. And Evelyn, surrounded not by people who controlled her life but by people who respected it, looked more at home than she had in weeks. The unopened envelope still rested inside Owen's truck. He had almost forgotten it. He walked over, opened the driver's door, and pulled it from beneath the center console. Without reading a single page, he folded it once, dropped it into the recycling bin beside the garage, and closed the lid. Some chapters didn't need to be reopened to be left behind. He turned back toward the porch. Lily was laughing. Evelyn was telling another story. Claire was listening instead of interrupting. For the first time in a long while, Owen realized that healing rarely arrived as one extraordinary moment. More often, it appeared as a series of ordinary choices made with extraordinary respect. And that was more than enough.